Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Lori, and welcome to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. This podcast fosters curiosity and understanding about neurodiversity while empowering individuals with tools for acceptance and inclusion in classrooms, the workplace, and communities. Featuring shared stories of neurodiverse life experiences, it sheds light on navigating a world not designed for diversity. Universally Unique starts now.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I'm Dr. Pat. It's so great to have all of you tuning us in, turning us on. I get to share the stage with the most incredible Dr. Lori Noto. Today, this is the question. You've heard me talk about it. You've heard others talk about it. It's a term that's relatively new. It is neurodivergent. Now, we're going to find out from Dr. Lori not only what this means, but how this phrase, this word, this way of being has transformed over time. And what is it about this particular word to describe a group of people that seems to resonate these days more than any other word out there? Dr. Lori, welcome. This is a great show, and it's a great topic to talk about the depth and the breadth of this. It seems like we've taken just about everything floating out there that's related to neurological or something and put it here. Is this helpful now to have a phrase like this? Does it describe more what neurodivergent is, or are we just confusing the issue more?
I think we'll get into that, but I'm going to actually have us take a moment to pause and relax. I like to get us started in this way. So we'll take 3 box breaths together. So you're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. And there we are. So I haven't been counting.
Easy to do.
Yeah, I haven't been counting because I think everybody's 4 is a little bit different. So what I wanted to start with, though, is I wanted to talk about the podcast banner and kind of how we put that together and what it means, I think, to me, and I think to Dr. Pat as well, because we did this together. And how does this represent universal uniqueness? So I think hopefully folks have had a chance to see the visual for this. So even if you're listening to this and not looking at anything, hopefully you've seen the promotional piece. And I see it in 2 pieces. I see the open window as limitless possibilities. I think that many individuals who have fit into this group and to many other groups have oftentimes found themselves in situations where people did not believe that they had as much potential as they really truly have and discounted them very easily. So I think the window for me really represents the possibility of the world is yours in whatever way you see it. And I think some folks will open the window all the way. Some folks will only open it a little bit, but it really should be up to them and not up to people from the outside making judgments and decisions about them. So that piece, I kind of see that in that way. And the other part where there's the silhouette with all the puzzle pieces, I know Dr. Pat and I had a long conversation about this as we were picking out that particular symbol. The puzzle pieces have been associated frequently with autism and the autism community. And I think the people who originally put those puzzle pieces out there as a representation of autism saw people with autism as a puzzle to put together. And that's not the way that I see it. I see that silhouette more as the possibility that we're all puzzles. And as you put us together, you get a different visual. So everyone has different possibilities. Everyone has different pieces that go into who they are. But I don't necessarily see it as you are a puzzle that needs to be solved, because I think that gives people an impression that people with autism are complicated, which quite honestly, everyone's complicated, and that, I have to be able to figure this out. I think sometimes trying to not figure things out actually makes it work better.
Yeah.
You take folks for who they are at the moment that they're in. Certainly, if you're working with younger folks or trying to help folks develop skills, you don't want them to not make progress. But I think we need to recognize that everyone is their own unique self, and that we're not necessarily trying to solve a problem, which I think is, for me, the original puzzle pieces were the idea that it's a problem that needs to be solved. It's not a problem that needs to be solved. It's a puzzle. And when you put the pieces together, you get different pictures. And I think we need to recognize what the different pictures are, and everyone is unique. Yeah. So, Dr. Pat, what would you add?
I love this, because one of the things, the reason I was drawn to this puzzle is because, first of all, my best friend is here and she loves doing puzzles, but I realize we do them differently. You see, there's not one of us that does it right and the other wrong. For her, she's very good at, not looking at colors. See, for me, I got to go by the color, and I get the color and I find the piece. For her, she gets the piece. And you know what brought this to light? Now, this is a strange pop culture reference, but I will make it. Most recently, Ben Affleck plays a character in a movie called The Accountant. And I will never forget one of the first scenes from that movie where they take him to visit this place, and he's putting a puzzle together. And for some reason, he gets everything together and there's one piece missing. And the daughter of the owner, who is also autistic, sees the puzzle piece on the floor and brings it over and give it to him. Now, the reveal in all of that is he put the puzzle pieces together without looking at the picture. He put them together upside down. And so why am I bringing that up? Well, there are differences in the way we may go about things, but there are not deficiencies. And that's really what we're talking about today, to change the landscape in the dialogue. You and I are perfect examples. If you saw my GRE exams, you would talk about them as some kind of less than deficient, whatever that is, right?
Mine too.
Yeah. And yet, if you looked at my doctoral work, won awards. Why? Well, I don't know anybody. I don't know how people sit for 9 hours to take an exam. I just need to say I lasted 9 minutes. I don't know about you. But had we had a conversation about the questions in that, had I had a different vehicle, but we have to really overcome the stigma on this. And that's really what's been haunting so many young adults, then grown adults, most of us in the world. My phrase is, I may be different, but I'm not less than.
Exactly. And I think that, everybody does operate differently. I like to talk things out. If you want to know about something, I do so much better if you let me talk to you about it than if you ask me to take a test, or if you ask me to write it down. It takes me significantly longer to kind of get my thoughts together. And eventually I learned some strategies about just talking to the notes on the phone, and then figure out where it is that you are, because otherwise I'd stare at the blank page and become completely and totally paralyzed by the idea of writing something. We all operate differently.
I love this though, because finding, since the full-blown indoctrination of AI, there are some people that use AI. What's my name? Kind of. But you'll find that there are some of us that have learned to use AI in a phenomenal way. And, for me, I relate to AI as if it is another being. So therefore, when I talk to it, I give it my profile. It knows more about me. It understands when I come back to have a conversation. It will say things like, "Oh, did you take the Harley out today?" Because I built a profile, right? But it helps me ask it complex questions that I need organizing my thoughts on. And that's what I love. Today I was supposed to meet with Nat to go over video openers, but I realized that I am a little bit different. And the best way to sit down with both of us is not just to talk him through an opener and say, this is good, that's not good, but to take the opener and try to modify it so we have something that's tangible to see.
Mhm.
And that's really what I find I have to do a lot of times because my words don't always match what's in my brain. And I don't know if you could explain that or not, but I think that's kind of a common thing, right?
I think that happens to everybody. I think so many things that happen to individuals who identify as being neurodiverse are things that are happening to other people within the general population, so to
Yep.
speak. It's just that the folks within the general population go about things maybe differently, are able to hide those things, so that other folks don't realize that that's how they're operating. I think one of the things that I find really refreshing about many of the folks that I know that are neurodiverse is they just tell you what they're thinking. Sometimes it's a little blunt, sometimes you're a little taken back by it, but you're not worried about what it is that they're thinking. You don't see an ulterior motive or a hidden agenda because their agenda is right out there. And I appreciate that a great deal. One of the things that I did want to talk about today, besides identifying who is seen as being neurodiverse at this point, is I wanted to talk about a concept that comes out of education, primarily out of the special education arena, of person first language. And when I was working on my doctoral work, this was a big deal. This was you must always talk about people who have disabilities as people with disabilities and not disabled people, because that was seen as being disrespectful. And reconditioned all of my thoughts, reconditioned all my writing, which of course, when you go through and do any kind of check your writing, it doesn't like that because it looks like a giant run-on sentence. And more recently, more individuals are finding that they don't like that language because they see it as, opposed to being more respectful, they see it as being discounting who they really are. Historically, folks within the deaf community have always identified as deaf, and they don't like it if you refer to them as a person with deafness because they see their deafness really as truly a very obvious, overt, big part of who they are. So they want to be referred to as deaf. That community always stood their ground on that. What has started to happen more recently is many individuals within the autism community want to be referred to as autistic, or they'll say, I have, I have autism, or I am autistic, as opposed to a person with. And I think one of the challenges right now, especially for some of us who've been around for a little bit, is making sure that we are talking about particular individuals in the way that they want us to talk to them. So what I would encourage our listeners to do as they are meeting folks who fit into any community, probably at this point, is to ask them, how would you like me to refer to you? Yeah. Some folks prefer to be called a person with whatever it is that is part of them. And other people want to be referred to with, with autism, with, ADHD, with dyslexia, that they see that as such a primary part of who they are, that they want that to come first. I do think the professionals who started the whole idea of person first language did it with the best of intentions to make sure that people thought of folks as people and as individuals who had opportunities. but I think it's kind of shifted, and especially the younger folks on the spectrum, I've noticed, really don't want to be referred to as a person with. They want to be referred to, by whatever it is that is their neurodiversity.
Yeah. I find this so interesting because what I'm finding in the relationship with people that are neurodiverse, I'm finding a different dialogue like you. I'm really seeing this group of camaraderie almost under the term of neurodivergent. And for the first time, I think, and I work with people in recovery, and people in recovery in this particular group come to me mostly to work with them in this field. Wonder why that is. But, just saying. But the idea around this is really a kind of cool one. And hopefully it will help take the stigma, because neurodivergent refers to people, our brains function differently, but they don't function less than. They differently is the great word, which means in this science language, there's typical and then there's neurotypical. The bottom line is we're all different, but we happen to have this group of people that hits part of somebody's spectrum that says, you're a little bit, talking to me now, you're a little bit quirky. And, when somebody says that to me and it shows up on master performance reviews year after year, I'm like, okay, but you still gave me this cool rating, quirky from another planet. And you just give me the raise, right?
Yeah.
But boy, this is a journey.
Yes.
We have to learn how to honor people, regardless of how they call themselves, what they call themselves. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do. And I think right now there's been a lot more attention nationally, for good or for bad. And one of the things that I want to point out, and I think hopefully some of our listeners already know this, is that these are neurological differences. They are not diseases. You don't catch autism. You don't catch ADHD. It's not like the measles. It's not a disease. It's not something to fix. It's something to understand and something to support appropriately, but it is not something that you're supposed to run in there and fix. And I think that some of the current discussions at the national level are making people feel less than. I've noticed a number of folks, autistic folks, posting things on various social platforms about that, this is not how I operate, and you don't get to talk to me about that. And I appreciate that. So what I'd like to do is just point out who fits into this category as it currently is described. About 10 to 20% of the global population is considered neurodiverse. So, that's a pretty good chunk of people. The possibility that you're going to come in contact with at least one person probably every single day who fits into this group of people is just about a guarantee. So the individuals that are currently considered to be part of this group are folks that are autistic, folks that have ADHD, individuals that have what is described as DYS, which pretty much covers a whole array of learning challenges, dyslexia, dysgraphia, which is a writing challenge, dysorthographia, which is a spelling rule thing. I think I have that. Dyspraxia, which is a motor challenge, dyscalculia, which is a math challenge, and dysphagia, which is a challenge in oral language. We know people who have all of these things. And, I know that when I was teaching, I actually have had a number of students come back to me later and say, I didn't realize that my phobia about math or my phobia about writing really wasn't a phobia. It was a neurological difference, and it was a learning challenge. It wasn't that I didn't want to do these things. And now I really understand it and have some other strategies. The other group of folks that fit in here are folks that are gifted or have high intellectual potential. Because when you meet folks that fit into that group, they operate differently in the world too. They think about things in a completely different way than probably many other folks do. But if you think about the people who are in all these groups and you think about who's done all of the new and innovative things in the world, almost all of those individuals are people who fit in this group. You know, the people who invented, computer things, people have invented AI. I mean, they say that, Silicon Valley is like, the basket of, individuals who operate differently, individuals who are considered to be neurodiverse. They're all, they've all been sort of drawn to that field because they think about things in a way maybe that the rest of us don't necessarily think about them. So, the likelihood that, people who fit all of these categories is quite high. And many of them overlap, which I think, is happening probably much more frequently than recognized. I think sometimes when folks are having a challenge in learning, people overlook the parts that they bring that are outstanding. So I think, hopefully as we move forward as a society and as, and within the educational world, that we will get better at recognizing that a person can be both this and this, that they can bring multiple things to the table, and those two things together, create an even better potential situation. So, and just to reiterate, it's a variation. It's not a disability. It's not a flaw in the system. Actually, quite honestly, I think it's probably evolutionary in that that there's probably a good reason why folks are being diagnosed more frequently. But these are folks that sometimes have challenges cognitively because they don't necessarily learn in the same way that we traditionally present information. Sometimes they have sensory things that are sometimes problematic for them, whether it's too much noise, whether it's too many smells. They may have some behavioral traits that one might prefer that they don't have, but those are usually communication. And we just need to help them figure out how to communicate in ways that are not problematic to other people or not problematic for themselves. So the real goal is to make sure that we're recognizing and we're providing accommodations. Yeah. If you are working with adults that fit into any of these categories, asking them, what do you need? Do you need an office that's devoid of anything on the walls? Do you need to be in the place that's the quietest? Do you need to sometimes be able to step outside for a few minutes? If we're in a meeting and we're there too long, I don't need to be upset that you had to get up and leave for a couple of minutes because it was overwhelming. Just recognizing what folks need. And I think asking, to me, the best thing to do is just ask somebody, what's the best way for this to work for you?
Yeah. And I also love when you're working with groups, this is what I love to ask them. I ask them, who in history or who in our pop culture, who do you relate to in music? Do you think fits in a category or fits in a phase of life like you're in right now? Who are the people you identify with more than others in the world? And top of the list, you get Einstein for a lot of people. Top of the list, you get Einstein. And then you get others, and it depends. Some folks will point out Tesla. Others like to point out to Simone Biles, or better yet, Greta Thunberg. Mm-hmm. And, some of these people have come out and said, this is me. Jennifer Aniston is like, I'm dyslexic. Okay.
Yeah.
Over it, right? But the reason we do this is because they get to go on their own to really seek out others. Because don't you find a lot of the times, and we'll talk about this, in shows, often this is associated with less than. It's not associated with a puzzle, or it's not. It's you're that and you're less than. But the world, and now we're finding out some of the most genius minds. I had bagels with Arno Penzias, the Big Bang guy. And I got to tell you now, looking back, I would just tell you, how does a guy look at a satellite and say, oh, I think it's communicating what the world was made from?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many people, and I appreciate the fact that many of them are publicly acknowledging, excuse me, how they operate in the world. And I think that the more that people say those things, whether they're admitting, whether they're pointing out that they're neurodiverse or whether they're saying things like, I had cancer, please make sure you get your screenings, or
Yep.
I'm in sobriety, please, pay more attention to the things that you're putting into your body. When you look to somebody and you look to them as a role model, those things are always, I think, are very helpful. So.
And that's what we're talking about. I mean, part of this today is understanding what it is and what's happening. This is what you're shining light on. But there's also ways sometimes where you have to get help. How do people work with you? Because this really is, something that you have to walk the path and you have to figure it out as you go. But it is so much easier to work with someone like you that knows that there even is a path. How do people work with you?
Well, there's a couple ways that they can reach me. They can either reach me through my website at www.notoholisticconsulting.com or directly through email at notoconsulting2002@gmail.com. I think, the other thing too is people change over time. Somebody who's 15 is operating in one way. That same person at 30 has figured a bunch of other things out and is now working on something different.
Yeah. And you really have to look at this. And the key message today is what I say all the time. We may be different, but we are not less than.
Exactly.
That's what I tell the kids. May be different, honor it, think about it. Superman was different.
Absolutely.
And definitely
Absolutely.
not less than. What's your personal message? What do you want to leave us with today, Dr. Lori?
I think, we are all unique. I think for those of us who might not categorize ourselves as neurodiverse, I think it's important for us to recognize the things that other folks bring, and also to sometimes look at where are our skills and what do we bring to the table, and how can we assist other folks in finding the accommodations and support and encouragement that they need.
Thank you so much for today. And thank you all for tuning us in, turning us on. Remember, we're going to continue to have these conversations, but keep this in mind. If you see someone that seems different from you, remember not to put the different on it and the less than. Remember, people may be different, but they're not less than. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. Join me, Dr. Lori, on Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Monday at 11:30 Pacific Time as we continue to explore navigating a world not designed for diversity. For advocacy and support for individuals with disabilities, let's connect. Learn more about consulting and life coaching at notoholisticconsulting.com.